As I said, my name is Knowledge Lingi. I'm the Programs Coordinator for the Zimbabwe Biodiversity Network. I'm very much grateful for people attending here. Also taking note of Mr. Shoko, who is with us from the Ministry of Environment. We appreciate that recognition. So I'm just going to do a short presentation on youth involvement in biodiversity. So basically, before we go any further, it's critical for people to understand what is biodiversity. So from our understanding, biodiversity means life in its varieties. So it is the variety of life on Earth, which includes all those living organisms, those which we can see, those underneath the surface, those in water, and everywhere. So I was fortunate enough to find this simple picture, which I thought would depict what biodiversity is without me having to shout all along. As they say, a picture can say 1,000 words. So from plants, those that we do as food cash crops, medicines, trees, kitchen crops, and even those insects which we use as pollinators, they are part of the biodiversity. And we are also part of the biodiversity. So there's a linkage between the people, the plant, the animals, the soil, the water, and everything. So today is the International Day for Biological Diversity. So this day was adopted in 2000 by the United General Assembly as a day to recognize biodiversity and also to raise awareness within the communities. So as the youth today, we thought of celebrating together with the youth. Although this year's theme is our food, the theme focuses on raising awareness of how interconnected our health systems, our food systems are to the biodiversity. And to take a quote from the United Nations Secretary General, who wrote that from individual species to entire ecosystems. Something's going on with my picture. Let's me. So, from individual species to entire ecosystems, biological diversity is vital for human health and well-being. The quality of the water we drink, the food we eat, the air we breathe, all depend on keeping the natural world in good health. And this is a quote in what? In celebration of this year's International Biological Diversity. So, what is the Zimbabwe Biodiversity Network? It's a trust established in 2017 after the initial African Regional Capacity Building workshop which was held in South Africa by the Global Biodiversity Network. The Global Biodiversity Network is an international network of youth organizations from all over the world whose common goal is to prevent biodiversity loss. So what does ZBIN do? We aim to develop and implement capacity building, outreach, and awareness raising activities. We also want to create a platform for sharing knowledge, skills, and experiences on biodiversity issues and conservation. And this is why we are having such symposiums as this. We also want to popularize the aims and purposes of the CBT, which I am sure most of college dropouts or graduates are aware of. So, what is it that we do? We do biodiversity workshops. The pictures there depict Mr. Evans, the facilitator. He volunteered with us to do these 2 workshops. He did one in Jamestown with us, the other one at Fatima Zahinga. We also did one with Good Hope Academy, among other various schools that we've went to. The other work that we do is the awareness in terms of the strategic plan for biodiversity from 2010 to 2020. So we understand that biodiversity underpins ecosystem function and the provision of ecosystem services for the essentiality of human well-being. So biodiversity as a key provides food security, human health, the provision of clean air and water, and also improves our local livelihoods and the economic activities that we do for. So in 2010 in Japan, the partnership with the Convention adopted a strategic plan for biodiversity and to stretch from 2010 to 2020 with the purpose of inspiring broad-based extending support to biodiversity over the next decade for all countries and stakeholders.
My question now is, since I'm sure you said you've got expertise on policy making as part of your masters. No. Okay, but nevertheless, so I wanted to ask that ever since like I was born, some 50 years ago, I have been hearing the same talk over and over again about the need to increase awareness on these issues, but still find that each and every day on the news, people are still mentioning that this certain species has gone extinct, that species has gone extinct. It seems like it's the same talk but no action. What do you think can be done to make this issue appeal to the minds of the society as a whole as urgent? Because I can confirm that we've been hearing this for a long time, but every time you check the news, the environmental news to be specific, you hear about a species that has gone extinct. Thank you very much.
For so long, we've been hearing these stories of saying, let's do action now. Now is the time for action. Now this is the decade for action, sort of. And we're very fortunate enough to have Mr. Shoko today from the ministry. He's going to talk to us about the post-2020 framework, which is the vision. It has been discovered, but it's an ambitious target. People are not willing to commit. And this is why we have realized now it's now time to involve the youth. They have the wisdom, we have the energy. Sometimes they can just sit at the office and make a decision and say, I want to go to VA, but it's boring, we'll go there. But we have the energy, we have the innovation. In terms of what in biodiversity, so talking of poaching, kids here at school have got solutions, innovative solutions. How can we use ICT in Zimbabwe as an example to stop poaching? What technologies can be done? They've gone to school maybe 50 years ago. ICT is no longer part of them, but as a computer programmer, you can think of a software which can be used to improve ranger motivation, ranger, sort of. So this is why we thought as this thing for organizations saying, young people now have to be involved. It's time. We hope it's no longer a question of going in and out without concrete action. This is why we've heard that we've got communication, education, participation, and then action. We hope we'll make that dent go away for a long time.
I think everyone is answered, and let us move on to our next presenter, who is going to present to us on the theme on biodiversity and climate change. And before our presenter comes, I'm going to give you a rundown of his bio. And the name of our presenter is Jeremiah Mshosho, who is a climate change expert with over 10 years experience in climate, environment, and energy work. He has worked with community-based organizations, youth organizations, regional organizations, and international organizations, including the United Nations. Jeremiah has worked with Zimbabwe Environmental Lawyers Association, Zero Regional Environment Organization, Action 24, UNICEF Zimbabwe, WWF, and UNICEF Mongolia. He has managed several programs, including those on youth green innovations, youth climate mapping, children and climate change, and also regional program on mainstreaming climate change adaptation in conservation across Africa. He holds a bachelor's degree in environmental science from Middle State University, a master's of science degree in development studies from Women's University in Africa. He's also finalizing his MBA in energy and sustainability at the University of Cumbria in the United Kingdom. Jeremiah is also a certified expert in climate change, renewable energy, finance. So this time I present to you Mr. Jeremiah Mshosho.
It's an honor to be speaking to you today about climate change impacts on biodiversity. I see we have high school students here. So what I'll try to do is I'll try to simplify the other things that I'm going to say, but the other ones I will keep them as they are, because with graduates, with seniors, with high school students, so at least you learn something new that is a bit bigger. I also speak of something very simple, straightforward, which you can understand. And today, what I'm going to do is, at the end of this presentation, 4 things should happen. You should be able to define climate change. You should be able to identify the climate change impacts on biodiversity. You should be also to understand what we call climate smart conservation. And lastly, you should be also able to understand the role of the youth in issues to do with the biodiversity and climate change. I see I have 30 minutes, so I put a timer so that I make sure that I utilize my 30 minutes and also make sure that I will not go beyond the 30 minutes. So what I will do, I want to assume that we are all on the first page. So what I'm going to do, basically I'm going to talk about a few basic issues related to climate change so that we make sure that we are all on the same page. So before I define climate change, I just want to remind you, because I know you know these things, I just want to remind you some of the basic things that we are going to be looking at, because once you understand that, you will be able to understand the impact of climate change on biodiversity and our role as youths, our role as graduates, our role as governments, our role as stakeholders. So basically, the weather is actually the short-term behavior of the atmosphere. It may be cold in the morning, raining in the afternoon, snowing in the evening, and things like that. So these are the short-term changes which happen in our atmosphere. Now, talking about the climate, when we talk about the climate, this is the long-term behavior of the atmosphere, which is measurable. Classical climatology is 35 years. So these figures and data has been collected over 35 years to help us determine what is our weather in Zimbabwe, what is the weather of the UK. So the climate is for a particular place, right? I'll give you more similar information that can help you to try and understand the difference. So when you buy your clothes for the climate. But on a particular day, when you wear your clothes, you wear your clothes for the weather. If I look at your wardrobe and compare it with somebody's wardrobe in the UK, it's different. It reflects a different climate. But on a particular day, when you wear a jersey, you are responding to a weather, because it's not always every day when you wear a jersey, even if it's a colder place, sometimes it's a bit warmer. So those daily differences is what you respond to when you wear your clothes. That is your weather. So climate is what you expect, and weather is what you get. We are together?
Yes.
Okay. So that will make my job easier when defining climate change. So that long-term behavior of the atmosphere I've spoken about, when it changes, that's what we call climate change. What are we talking about? We are talking about the weather elements, precipitation, we're talking about temperatures, we're talking about humidity, we're talking about sunshine. When these weather elements change over a long period of time, this is what we call climate change. And we've all heard about the manifestations and the evidence of climate change. And I'm going to be talking more on these as I proceed. But basically, I know people confuse global warming and climate change. So I will just take a minute to try and distinguish between global warming and climate change. Now, I've already defined climate change. The long-term changes in temperatures, humidity, rainfall, wind, and other weather elements. But when we talk about global warming, we are only talking about the average increase in global temperatures. So global warming only looks at temperatures, whereas climate change talks about temperatures, talks about precipitation, and other weather elements like winds and many other related weather events. So this is the major difference between global warming and climate change. What are the causes of climate change? I'm not going to dwell a lot on this because of climate change, but as you can see, there are natural causes of climate change, but there are also anthropogenic causes of climate change, which are basically human activities. Our industries, our agriculture, our transportation, both land, oceans, air transportation, energy generation, and many other activities that we do. These are the things that are causing climate change because they emit what we call greenhouse gases. These greenhouse gases are the ones which are causing climate change. I'm not going to dwell a lot on that as well today, so I'll proceed. When we are addressing climate change, there are two basic things that can be done. Firstly, adaptation. I will define what adaptation is. There's also something that we call mitigation. I will also explain a bit on that. So when we talk about climate change adaptation, this is where systems, it could be human systems, it could be natural systems responding to the actual impacts of climate change or expected climate change impacts. So we have two types of climate change adaptation. The first example is anticipatory adaptation, where we prepare for future climate change impacts because we already know the risks. So there are predictions that have been made. So when we plan now to adapt to future climate change impacts, that are anticipatory adaptation. Then there's what we call responsive adaptation. Responsive adaptation is kind of coping. We already have a cyclone, we already have drought, we already have heat waves. How do we cope with those? So it's that type of adaptation where we're already feeling the impacts and we are already responding to the impacts at the same time when they are happening. So we are trying to respond to the climate change impacts. That's what we call adaptation. And mitigation. Mitigation, these are efforts that we deliberately make to either reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases, prevent the emission of greenhouse gases, or sequestrate the already emitted greenhouse gases. So these are the three principles that are related to climate change mitigation. And as we go on, you will see the role of biodiversity in some of these things. For example, for adaptation, biodiversity can be used for adaptation. And also biodiversity can be used for climate change mitigation. How do we do that? I'll give you a very simple example. Trees, they are major carbon sequestrators. They absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, of which carbon dioxide is one of the major greenhouse gases in terms of abundance in the atmosphere. So this is how biodiversity also plays a role in climate change mitigation, but also biodiversity plays a role in climate change adaptation. I'll also explain to you why do we need to mitigate, why do we need to adapt to climate change. Why do we even want to focus on biodiversity and climate change? We know that Africa is a beautiful continent. It has a lot of unique biodiversity that is not only conservation value, but it is a means of survival for the poor communities in Africa. This is why we need to protect our biodiversity. Now, whilst our continent is very rich in biodiversity, predictions already show that climate change is going to be the single driver of biodiversity loss over the next 50 to 100 years. Why? Because if you look at the vulnerability of Africa to climate change, you will see that we are highly vulnerable. We do not have the resources to adapt. We do not have the capacity to adapt. And the international community is letting us down. Because now climate change has become a political issue. And you see some of the biggest emitters in terms of carbon dioxide, they are not committed to fighting climate change. They keep on playing games, yet we're already suffering, and the future is bleak. What do we do as the youths? You also realize that about 25 to 42% of plant species in Africa are going to disappear because of climate change, unfavorable conditions, extreme weather events, increased temperatures, reduced precipitation. This is what we're going to be seeing because of climate change. So what are the risks? Where do we derive these impacts from? So if you reflect back when I started talking about what is weather, what is climate change, you will see that these are the things we are talking about. What is happening because of climate change? We are seeing shifting of seasons. What implications does it have on the biological diversity? The plant species, the animal species. What is the impact of shifting of seasons? Changing precipitation patterns. We're talking about the timing, the intensity, the frequency, the quantities of precipitation. What impact does that have on the biological diversity? Increased temperatures, extreme weather events. We're also increasing frequency and severity of extreme weather events, lots of cyclones, lots of heat waves, lots of droughts, lots of floods. What is the implications? Because we all know that biological diversity rely on rainfall, temperatures, and many other things. Even their breeding seasons, they are timed based on the precipitation and rainfall seasons, and those are changing. What is the implication? There's also increased variability in climate, changes in cloud cover, and changes in wind speed. All these, because you already know that the climate is an interconnected system that plays around with wind directions, wind speeds, moisture, temperatures, precipitation. So this system, once disturbed, we are going to see a lot of disturbances in our biodiversity. So what are we talking about? When we look at the geophysical impact of climate change, the changes on the oceans, the ice, freshwater soils, we know of biodiversity that relies and lives in water. We know that all the water that we have is because of the precipitation, but the pressure balance between the ocean and the land mass is going to be affected because of climate change. What is the implication on the precipitation on land? What is the implication for life underwater because of climate change? When we also talk about the ecological impacts, the changes in biodiversity and ecosystem services, there are certain services that are played by our ecosystems. These ecosystem services, for example, the regulatory services, for example, the wetlands play in keeping our water and cleaning our water. What is the implication when we no longer have those? What is the implication on the provision services of the ecosystems when we have climate change? For example, I've picked just a few areas to talk about in terms of biodiversity. When we look at wildlife, a lot of species are going to migrate outside of protected areas. Those who understand conservation, they are protected areas where there is a huge and rich constituents of wildlife. And these areas are protected because the wildlife live there. But now with climate change, what we've seen is that those areas, some of them are going to be drier in the future. And areas outside those protected areas may be the ones with water. So what you will see is that species will migrate from those areas. I'll give you an example. I've had the privilege to be working in the Masai Mara, in the Great African Rift Valley, in Masai Mara in Kenya, where you see that people have settled in certain areas and they've put some fence around their houses. But because it's a corridor for elephants, they will not turn right or left. They will just come straight even on top of their house. Because they are migrating, it's their corridor, they are going to look for water. These are the challenges that are coming with climate change. So we realize that without the next thing I'm going to describe, climate smart conservation, we are going to face a lot of challenges with this. But when you look at fresh water, surface water is disappearing, more and more disappearing. Even the groundwater, the water table is going down because the precipitation has been reduced, temperatures have increased. And also coupled with human activities like deforestation, expansion for agriculture, we've seen that there's not enough infiltration of water to form the groundwater and even the surface water. A lot of water is just running off and going. So these are some of the impacts that we're going to see. Then the forests, there's increased incidence of forest fires. I know last year there's a lot of forest fires that happened, destroyed properties and killed people, destroyed lots of forests because increased temperatures because of climate change. Forests have been burning. We've been losing a lot of biodiversity. Even the oceans, because of surface temperatures, we've seen ocean rise, we've seen acidification, and the biological diversity which depends on water has been affected. Now, some of the things, we are going to see a change in species distribution because of climate change, because they are going to be scattered everywhere, looking for water and many other resources that they actually require. I want to give you an example before I even go into the climate smart conservation. For instance, an area with elephants, they require a lot of water, but when you realize that there is no water, and you just drill a borehole, what is going to happen with that borehole in the next 10 years? Maybe it's also going to dry. So now when we talk about climate smart conservation, you just do not come and do conservation business as usual. I'll talk more on that. How do we climate smart our conservation strategies? The population of many species has already declined because the environmental conditions are no longer favorable because of climate change. Reduced water, floods, sometimes changing of the seasons, and increased temperatures and many other impacts. They are causing those species to change in terms of distribution, composition, and their functions. Also, desert ecosystems have expanded. We've seen so many areas happening what we call desertification because of climate change. They are expanding, deserts are expanding, which is not good also for adults. They need to be supervised because what they are doing with the environment, they are not being responsible. She thinks that the youths need to supervise the adults, work with them, and make sure that they are doing the right thing. What do they say? They keep saying, we owe it to the young people to give them hope. And she says, but I don't want you hope. I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear that I feel every day. And lastly, I want you to act. This is the spirit that we need the youth to have.